Welcome, everyone. Good evening. This is the English Language National Leadership Debate for our leadership contest of the Green Party of Canada. I would like to begin by acknowledging that I am with you all tonight from the unceded territory of the Tla'amin First Nation. And with that, a reminder that those of us who are settlers have a great responsibility to learn and share truth and seek justice. And that in a country with ongoing genocide, there is much work to do. Tonight, if you are interested, there is interpretation for French at the bottom of your screen. And also a reminder that the vote for the leadership contest opens on November 12th and ends in the middle of the day on November 19th. I am very excited to be passing on this role of leader of the Green Party to one of the 6 fantastic contestants that you're going to be hearing from tonight. I know that the party will be in good hands. We are in a party in a time of transformation, and that transformation is reflected in our society, in our planet. And so this is a very important moment for us in everything that we have to do for ourselves and everything that we are responsible to do for our country and for this amazing planet. With that, I would like to welcome our moderator, Chelsea Nash, who is the deputy editor of the Hill Times. Good luck to all of the contestants tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. As Amita said, my name is Chelsea Nash. I'm the deputy editor at the Hill Times newspaper. I'm very excited to be moderating tonight's debate as I join you virtually from our newsroom in downtown Ottawa. The format for this evening's debate consists of 2 rounds of panel-style discussions and 3 rounds of one-on-one debate. For the panel portion, candidates will appear in alphabetical order, and for the debates, candidates will go up against as many of their opponents as possible, but those who are running as co-leaders will not face off against one another. Each candidate has 2.5 minutes of extra time, which they can use at any point in the debate to either extend their time to answer a question or to interject with a rebuttal. Again, this extra time can be used at any time over the course of the debate, and candidates have been asked to raise their hand function on Zoom to indicate they want to interject and will be called upon by me after they have done so. Welcome to our candidates. They are in alphabetical order as follows: Sarah Gabrielle Barron, Simone Nokini Messier, Anna Keenan, Elizabeth May, and Elizabeth is running for co-leadership with Jonathan Pedneau. And then we have Chad Walcott, who is also running for co-leadership with Anna Keenan, as you can see there side by side this evening. We are on a tight schedule, of course, so without further ado, we'll move on to opening statements. Candidates have been asked to prepare an opening statement that reflects their priorities for the party. They have 2 minutes each. In alphabetical order, we'll start with Sarah. You have 2 minutes.
Honey, bonjour, salut, bonsoir. I am coming to you from Ottawa, which is unceded Algonquin territory. I've spent the past 22 years living on Minidow-Minising, which is in Ojibwe, Manitoulin Island. And I have been deeply devoted to green political philosophy since 1991. I was a teenager when I read some of our formative books, and I chose to live very small and close to nature. I joined the party in 2005, and I was very keenly interested in our member-made policy process and our key commitments to nonviolence, participatory democracy, ecological wisdom, social justice, respect for diversity, and sustainability. And I have watched our party for 17 years now, and I've been waiting for us to be true to that key principle of participatory democracy and a decentralized power structure. My plan is to grow our party in 3 key ways. Green members come to the party for different reasons in different ways, but we stay for the following reasons: because it's fun, because it's interesting, and because it grows our confidence. We have the most fun when we get together at the Electoral District Association level. The EDAs are most of them in skeletal situations where they're barely getting by. But the ones that are thriving because they're getting together, they're having fun, they're making close-knit community with each other and in their communities. Volunteers knocking on doors for a candidate that they chose, that they love, that's what wins elections. Members stay in our party because it's interesting. And the place for that is in our member-made policy process.
Sorry, Sarah, your time is up. We'll move on now to Simon.
Yes, hi, bonjour. So I'm talking to you from unceded territory from Algonquin First Nation. So I'm running for the leadership of Green Party of Canada on the platform of green social democracy. What do I mean by green social democracy? Traditional social democracy opposes neoliberal capitalism by focusing on meeting the needs of all citizens, as opposed to the neoliberal goal of merely creating more wealth. It strives to guarantee universal social benefits. What green social democracy does is to reassume state control over major levers of our economy to ensure that citizens, not high-tech billionaires or big old company billionaires, determine the economic and ecological future of society. The deadly threat of global warming requires very large public investments to rapidly move towards zero greenhouse gas emissions. This means major transformation in the system of energy, transportation, and production, as well as the retrofitting of residential and commercial buildings to make them energy efficient. Currently, Greens are in coalition governments with traditional social democrats in Germany, Finland, Belgium, and Luxembourg. All have proportional representational electoral systems, all have high standards of living, and all are outperforming Canada in the transition to carbon neutral economies. The message is very clear. When you merge green values with social democracy, you have a winning formula. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.
Great, thank you. I should have mentioned at the top there that this debate is taking place for 2 hours this evening. So just to let everyone know who's tuned in. We'll move on next to Anna.
Thank you very much, Chelsea, and thanks to the Hill Times for hosting us tonight. Myself and Chad are joining you tonight from Ebiguit, also known as Prince Edward Island, one of the 7 territories of Mi'kma'ki here in the Maritimes. I come to this leadership race having committed myself to the environmental and climate movement in my teenage years. I'm originally from Australia, and I was first involved with the Australian Greens there. My career took me after graduating with science and economic degrees in Australia. I started working on climate change action because I knew I didn't want to be just another scientist that politics was going to ignore on this critical issue of our time. The climate crisis. So I began working for international climate advocacy organizations. I worked in Europe for Greenpeace International for 5 years, and that's where I met my Canadian-born husband. Moved to Canada in 2013, originally to Montreal, and then to PEI. Where I've served as the president of the PEI Green Party, who are now, of course, official opposition here. And I've run in the last 2 federal elections, being in the top 6 candidates in the country both times. Where I believe the Green Party needs to position ourselves in Canadian democracy at this time is a party that can actually give hope, that is based in real solutions, and that is based in citizen empowerment and true democratic participation. I think when Canadians look at politics at the moment, the dominant feeling is a feeling of disappointment and frustration because we've been promised the world, but we're not actually seeing results in terms of progressive policies on climate change, on housing, on economic inequality, on healthcare. All of the key issues that citizens care about have actually gotten worse over the last 7 years. And then Pierre Poilievre is picking up those seeds of frustration and turning them to anger. We can respond instead of with anger, with love. And I think that's the primary value that the Greens bring forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Anna. Elizabeth, you're next. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chelsea. I'm speaking to you today from the unceded traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking people. I'm slightly outside of my riding on WSÁNEĆ territory. I have been involved in the Green movement since practically from the moment I could walk, but it's certainly since 1980 when I and a few colleagues decided that there should be a political party in Canada that spoke to issues of environment and anti-nuclear concerns. We were then the small party. Within 3 years, some of those who'd been involved, Trevor Hancock in particular, led us to create the Green Party in 1983. I have run as a Green Party federal candidate in 1 by-election, 5 general elections, 4 of them in which I led the party. And I left at the point that we had our biggest success ever with 3 elected MPs, a strong party with a good bank account. And I was sure that we had a great succession plan with so many terrific candidates running in the 2020 leadership race. Unlike that leadership race, I have to say this one is fantastic in that we are forming a team. I think that we all feel the same sense of solidarity that we want to see all of us elected to Parliament. My Green values come from wanting to be effective, to see us be world leaders and change makers. I'll never forget what Petra Kelly, whom I had the honor to know, who was a founder of the German Greens, once said, which is, as Greens, we have to do the impossible, or we'll be forced to suffer through the unthinkable. I'm convinced there is hope and there is time. We may be standing on the very edge of too late, but we have time, and we must share a positive green vision and share the solutions with Canadians who are desperate to know that it's not too late. I am so honored to be running with Jonathan Pegno, the youngest candidate in this race. I'm no point in denying it, the oldest candidate in this race, but with that comes experience and wisdom. And I hope you'll do me the honor of voting for Jonathan and me to lead the Green Party.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth. And we'll move on to Jonathan.
Thank you, Chelsea. I'm joining you from Tiohtià:ke, also known as Montreal, on the unceded territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka. No task can be more pressing for our generation, for my generation, than securing the possibility of a future. And Greens have a role to play, and it cannot wait. From climate change to the weakening of liberal democracies, a changing world order, we must accept that we stand in the middle of accelerating, self-reinforcing, and undeniably destructive changes. We don't need to talk millenniums or centuries to see their effects. In fact, we see them already. Fiona, the atmospheric river, derecho in Ottawa. Tonight, you will hear candidates trying to highlight the need for us to look inward, to engage in a full-on reconstruction of this party, to turn the page. I'm here to tell you that the page Elizabeth and I want to turn with this party is on an extractivist, polluting Canada that's led by individuals who talk the talk, but don't walk the walk. With Elizabeth and I, you have 2 individuals who walk the walk, 2 individuals who have dedicated their lives to green ideals. We're in the middle of several crises. I've seen many of them firsthand. Over the past 14 years that I've been traveling to the front lines of conflicts, revolutions, tragedies in Africa, the Middle East, Asia, South America. I've seen how the world's post-war architecture repeatedly falls short on its promise to reduce suffering, broaden the benefits of freedom, safety, rights, and equality. So the times they call on us all to step up our game. We must link our thinking and actions with the achievements of the greater good. The choices we take with our party in this leadership race, they have an impact. Let's make sure they fortify our ability to respond to our most pressing task at hand, which is to respond to the climate emergency. With Elizabeth and I, you know what you get. Thank you.
Last but not least, Chad, you're up.
Thank you very much, Chelsea. So I'm super excited at the opportunity to run alongside my esteemed colleague, Anna Keenan, for the leadership of the Green Party of Canada. The fact is, Anna and I bring 25 years of experience in nonprofit governance, conflict resolution, as well as campaign management and campaigning skills. Our priorities for the Green Party of Canada are to invest in our membership and allow for us to build our capacity to run strong campaigns throughout the nation, to do the work of getting 12 MPs elected to Parliament so we can have the balance of power and start moving forward on policies that Greens lead on. Policies like bold climate action, like building a well-being economy that puts people instead of profit first, and working on deepening our democracy. And one policy in particular that we're excited about is our Green Leaders Network. It's a capacity building initiative that will allow us to not only strengthen our electoral district associations and give our candidates a fighting chance to get elected in the next election, but it will also provide our members, our candidates, and our associations with transferable skills so they can lead in their communities on a regular basis. In order for Canada and the Canadian electorate to put their faith and trust in the Green Party of Canada, they need to see that we have our house in order and that we can lead through action. And that's the priorities for Anna and I, is to place and position the Green Party of Canada as a resource for deepening our democracy in all communities across this country, and give our members an opportunity to show that, like I said, Greens can lead through action by pushing local initiatives forward and by showing Canadians that our democracy, though it is slightly damaged, can be fixed and can work in their favor. And in so doing, when community members turn to us and say, hey, how did you learn how to do these skills? Or how did you learn how to push this initiative forward? They can say, we learned this in the Green Party, and join us so we can create a Canada that works for all Canadians. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidates, for the opening statements. We'll now move on to the panel portion of the debate. I will be asking a series of questions, and each candidate will be given 1.5 minutes or 90 seconds to respond. And candidates will be asked to respond in a rotating alphabetical order. Our first topic is about internal issues within the party and party unity. The last few years have been a tumultuous time for the Greens when Annamie Paul, the first Black and Jewish woman to lead a federal party in Canada, resigned. She also turned in her membership card, saying her leadership had been destabilized from within. There were also reports that she experienced racism and misogynoir from senior party officials. The first question is, do you accept that Annamie Paul faced racism and discrimination from inside the party? And if so, how do you plan to change the internal culture? So with that, because Sarah went first with opening statements, Simon, you're up first for this one.
Okay, thank you. So I respect my fellow candidates here and will support them after the new leader is elected, whether that be me or any of them. I respect all the federal councillor, my former shadow cabinet critics, the GPC Fund Board, and the staff and the volunteer of the Green Party. Most importantly, I respect the members of our party. Therefore, I found it very difficult to accept the narrative of mainstream media that we are in constant internal strife in the party. So I don't agree with what happened to Annamie, and I think it's very important that we address that, and by the way to do that is by being model. I think that currently we have collectively turned the page of those mistakes and fail of the leadership of the past, and that we are moving on. And my fellow leadership candidates all wants to move forward to creating strong party unity and preparing ourselves for the next federal election. My focus is on creating a climate of trust. And that's how I answer that question. A climate of trust and tolerance and dissenting views within the party on a daily basis. I think that's the most important. I think that's the direction by being model. I believe that we can achieve a lot by acting as model for the 6 green value of.
Okay, your time's up, Simon. Anna, you have 90 seconds.
Great. Thank you for the question. It's a difficult question, but I'm going to answer it directly. It's a commitment of mine to try to answer every question that we're asked directly rather than skirting around the issue as politicians so often do. So to answer the question, I know, because I knocked on doors at the last election. I ran a stronger campaign than I had in the previous election last time. And I know that I know from what people told me at the doorsteps that half of the support that we lost in 2021 was people saying, you know what, I don't like your leader right now. But the other half of the support that we lost was saying, I don't like the way that your party has treated the leader. It was a toxic conflict. I think there were errors made on both sides, and I do accept the proposition that Annamie Paul did experience misogyny and racism within the party. Does that mean that she was a faultless leader and had no responsibility for the conflict? No, it doesn't. I think there were faults on both sides, and I have provided direct feedback to people in the spirit of learning and trying to improve the culture within the party at that time. I think that in order to develop a culture of trust and safety within the party, we need to have excellent anti-harassment policy. We need to be going through restorative justice processes. We need to have professional approaches. I was a Labour representative at past workplaces, and I have led and accompanied workers through anti-racism issues or anti-harassment and anti-bullying processes. And we have been weak on that within the party in the past, and we need to strengthen it. That's a key part of creating safe spaces. Thank you.
Okay, Elizabeth?
Thank you. I'm also quite famous for answering questions directly. I went for a cup of coffee once in Toronto, and the kid behind the counter said, "Oh, I know you. You're the lady who answers questions." This is a tough one, and I appreciate Anna going and being very honest about it. The Green Party is a subset of Canadian society. Canadian society has problems with racism, sexism, homophobia, and we have to confront that and be, as individuals and as Green Party representatives, active allies in solidarity with equity-seeking groups. That said, there was a mismatch between Annemie's skills and her talents and what a Green Party leader should be. So you need to be a team builder. You need to listen to other people. You need to bring in deputy leaders. And she didn't appoint deputy leaders. She didn't appoint her shadow cabinet till summer had gone by practically. There were mistakes that were made on all sides, and there's no question about that. I have asked publicly for the party to do an investigation of the charges that Annemie Paul has made. It's important that we get to the bottom of them. I've not seen a report of any investigation, if one was done. As a newly elected leader in this party, I will continue to ask for it. No white woman would ever have the gall to suggest that a racialized person did not experience racism. That said, having been as close to the campaign as I was allowed to be, I don't believe that was the reason for our dismal results in 2021. We can fix it, and we can do much better.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. We'll move on to Jonathan. You have 90 seconds.
Thank you for the thank you for the question. As a biracial and gay man, I can understand that, you know, in my experience with this party so far, I have not personally experienced the kind of behavior that Annemie has spoken about. I think, and it's not to say that it doesn't exist. It is to say that I think we have within our party, by and large, a majority of amazing, incredible Green members from coast to coast who are dedicated and committed to the Green values, one of which is respect for diversity. And, you know, this is the heartening welcome that I've received from so many Greens testifies to that. Now, we do need to build infrastructure and institutions within our party that are welcoming, that are spaces where people feel safe, and that can provide also accountability when there are issues. Most of my career has been spent looking to document and talk about violations and seek justice for these violations. So I have no tolerance whatsoever, and neither does Elizabeth, for racism, for bullying, for any types of intolerance. But as Elizabeth said, we are a subset of Canadian society. These are ills that are found throughout this country. And of course, you know, they are to be found within the Green Party. Now, Elizabeth and I are committed to building an inclusive party that welcomes everyone.
Thank you, Jonathan. Chad?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So, you know, we've been talking a lot lately within the party about the concept of restorative justice. And one key principle of restorative justice is accountability, and also believing the people who claim that they've been harmed. So as such, I absolutely believe that Annemie felt that she was experiencing and the victim of misogynoir. We have to begin from a process and a stance of believing the victim in this case. And that's not to say that Annemie did not have their faults and have her faults. You know, it's been said on multiple occasions, but on the issue of racism and sexism, if she brought forward these allegations, then we owe it to ourselves to believe her to begin with and look into it and begin the process of restorative justice. So it doesn't mean necessarily kicking out people who may have offended, but it's a process of assuring that those people understand that they've caused harm and do the work of building the bridges to correct that harm to begin. So how do we build unity, and how do we create safe spaces for people of color and underrepresented groups within the Green Party of Canada. We have to actually build the structures. We have to hold ourselves to the level of accountability in our restorative justice model, but we also have to build structures so that we can learn to not make these mistakes. That's why Anna and I have committed to creating a Black caucus, to creating a caucus for the LGBTQ2I+ community, to reinforcing the Indigenous advisory circle that we have in our party. If we're going to learn how to include everyone, then we need to include everyone at the table and create structures for them to meaningfully contribute.
Thank you, Chad. Sarah, you're the last to respond to this question.
This goes back to 2010. So we in our constitution used to have timed leadership races every 4 years. And in 2010, Elizabeth May argued that we should get rid of that. And we have the system that we have now. I remember at the podium arguing with Elizabeth where she said she would be too busy, and members agreed to that. And I tried to argue that participatory democracy requires that we do keep that timed leadership election race. And so we lost that institutional knowledge on how to run a race, and we lost that institutional knowledge on how to onboard a new leader. And there were problems with Anna Meepal's contract that led to that domino effect that went on throughout the year. So I've learned the lessons, and in my platform that's been available since the first week, I talk about a reporting system. We need 2022, we need an incident reporting system so that when Greens do, like Anna Meepal, for sure, she experienced aggressions and microaggressions. Equity-seeking Greens need to have a reporting and supporting system so that they hear immediately and they have help and there are pathways laid out. I'd like to thank Dr. Kuttner, who has served on our Justice, Equity, Diversity and Inclusion, our JEDI committee, and I'm really looking forward to supporting those ideas that have been developed so far. When it comes to restorative justice, I am very grateful that I've had the chance to live and work on reserve with the Anishinaabe Nation, mostly the Ojibwe Nation within the Anishinaabe Nation. And so restorative justice can take different forms.
Thank you, Sarah. Elizabeth, I'll pass it to you. You can use some of your extra time to respond.
I'm going to try to keep it very brief. Sarah's misremembering. I was not arguing that we should get rid of something we had. I was sticking with the Constitution. The constitutional changes have been made in relation to the leader's role by the members. I've never argued for anything different than what the Constitution says. The Constitution says after every election, there is a vote of the membership, whether there's confidence in the leader, and that is all that I was respecting, the existing Constitution.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Simon, did you want to intervene as well?
Yes, please. So I want to add that I joined the Green Party in part because of 6 principles, but also because Anna Meepal was there. And I thought it was interesting that the Green would have a leader of color. And I want to make sure as the future leader, maybe that there will be space for all community, all different ethnic, and that the Green Party will be a place where everybody can thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. We'll move on now to the next question. As leader of the Green Party, you are expected to be a spokesperson for the membership. As you all know, this membership often has diverse opinions on a variety of political topics. How do you intend to represent all members of the Greens, including those you might personally disagree with? Anna, you can begin with 90 seconds on the clock.
Great. Thank you very much. I love this question. I think it's true within any political party that there are different groups within the party. Sometimes they're called factions. In the Green Party, I just like to think of them as different groups of people that have slightly different philosophical orientations. And Chad and I have said since the very start of our campaign that whether you identify as primarily an eco-socialist or a traditional environmentalist or an intersectional progressive or an Indigenous activist, that there is a place for you in this party. It is the role of council and leadership to facilitate participation. It's not the role of a leader to pick and choose which groups they want to be dominant and to suppress participation of any voices. We want to support all voices to bring their proposed policies to the table at our general meetings and to hash out those ideas. I think it's really through the grassroots policy process that the policy of the party as a whole can be created, and it's through a dynamic interaction between all of the different, the slight variations of green philosophy that we're going to get to the best outcomes. So we are, inclusive. We are coalition builders. I think we speak the language of all of these different groups and understand where they're coming from. And we're not going to support the sort of factional behavior where we're trying to suppress the voices of any one of these groups. We're going to listen and learn from all of them.
Elizabeth, 90 seconds.
Thank you. Well, fortunately for me, with the experience I've had within the Green Party, it has only fortified my commitment to consensus decision-making. Consensus decision-making is a way of listening to everyone. You take your time and you work until you have achieved a literal consensus. That was my approach when all the activism I did as a grassroots organizer over decades was not to use Robert's Rules of Order. I have a whole chapter in my book, How to Save the World in Your Spare Time, on why groups that want to get anything done shouldn't use Robert's Rules of Order. And the green rules on consensus are part of our Constitution. And I've been in rooms where you've seen people with very strongly held views, and they are coming from different places. The job of a leader of the Green Party, unlike the other parties where they say top down, we enforce this, and otherwise there's no party discipline. You listen and you keep going around, and you go around and you say, if we move in this direction, does it give us consensus? I've been in rooms where we couldn't achieve consensus at a BGM, struck a different committee to go back and work on it more. And then by the next chance we get together, there is consensus achieved. Consensus decision-making in an organization is the same as proportional representation. There's listening, there's coming to an agreement, and the other route is winner take all, top down, winners and losers. We need the time and the space to follow Indigenous ways of decision making through consensus.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Jonathan?
Thanks for the question. A couple of years ago, I was working in the Central African Republic, and I had the challenge of building a radio station in a city that was divided by various armed groups. We had the Anti-Balaka on the one hand, the Seleka on the others. Both sides had weapons. Both sides were burning houses. Both sides were actively violent with one another. And the last thing they wanted was to see a radio station built in their city, because that would provide good information to the community. By sitting with these people repeatedly, by listening, by trying to understand their perspective, we finally agreed we finally found a solution, common ground, to build a radio station. I don't think the Green Party is more complex or crisis-ridden than certainly some of the situations that I've had to work in. One thing I want to make clear here is that we're all Greens for a reason. We're all Greens because we believe, first and foremost, in crucial, actionable climate action as soon as possible. We agree on the fact that the Liberals, the NDP, the Conservatives are no alternative to green policies. We have already established amazing policies. The other parties keep on stealing them. Let's focus on that. Let's make sure that we carry this message forward. Elizabeth has been doing that for so many years. I've been a spokesperson for organizations like Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International. Both of us are perfectly capable of listening, of finding common ground, and communicating that forward to Canadians.
Thank you, Jonathan. Chad, 90 seconds.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So in speaking with members throughout this leadership race, what we've heard time and time again is that a level of frustration that in the past, certain groups have felt repressed, or like their voices were suppressed, and that they couldn't move their policies forward because it wasn't the right policy, right? And so Anna and I have committed, as she mentioned before, to giving resources to everyone in the party to move their policies forward, to give them a chance to create that consensus, to make their arguments mainstream and put them into our policy platform. Because as leaders of the Green Party of Canada, our job is to speak to and advocate for the voted on party policies. And so our job as leaders, we believe, is to give every group the resources necessary to create a broad coalition for their ideas, workshop them so that they're palatable to a wide breadth of our membership, and to pass them at the regularly scheduled general assemblies. And that's something that we've committed to. It's work that I've done within the Quebec wing of the party for the past few years, helping for groups in animal rights move their advocacy forward, pushing to create more space and more bilingualism within the party inside the AQPVC. So Anna and I are individuals who lead by example, and we put the policies that we believe in and the actions that we believe in forward through the actions that we take. We lead by example, and that's what we plan to do as leaders.
Thank you. Sarah, you're next. Sarah?
Thank you, Chelsea. Because this question gives me the opportunity to speak with Greens about the somewhat shocking dream world that the others are living in. Two leaders, two egos at the top does not magically a grassroots organization make. Get together of egos in person does not magically a grassroots organization make. Since the beginning, I've been talking about providing at least 3 nights a week, policy table talks where all members are invited, where your shadow cabinet representative will be available. I've been talking about green table talks that are philosophical in nature. And our first topic will be, what is eco-socialism? So the definitions of what is eco-socialism are different for everyone. And we need to get together and as a family, be bold and say, this is a new political philosophy that Greens are creating together. And so it's in those moments at conferences where that magic happens, and it shouldn't be relegated to the end of the weekend once every 2 years. We're going to be doing this at least 3 nights a week with my leadership office. So I live in the real world, the green world, that is truly grassroots.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And Simon, you're last.
Yes, I'm an open mind. I go to people with, yes, I have my values, my ideas, my way of seeing the world, but it's not static, it's moving, it changes. And I like to understand other people, why they bring some topics, some way of seeing things. So, and then I will talk and communicate and understand their point of view that may make me change my position and see things differently. So I think it's very important to add all those different opinions and knowledge, point of view that's like we can share and understand each other. And if we disagree sometime, if it doesn't goes against our value, but it's really because of like technical point or very specific and scientific like position, it's like we have to go with the consensus, like Elizabeth said, and I think that's very important. What the members will decide and what the group will decide, then you have to go with the consensus and go in that direction. And that's very important if we want to work and grow and get more seats at the House of Commons. We need to understand that that's part of working together as a group. It will happen. Disagreement happen all the time, and we need to make sure that we understand that there's no way to go and to do some trap.
Okay, that's it for that topic. Let's talk now about the relevance and influence of the Green Party. As a result of recent reports of infighting, including as recently as during this leadership campaign, the Green Party's reputation as a credible alternative for voters has suffered. How do you intend to repair the reputation of the party and build trust with those outside your own party? Elizabeth, I'll turn to you to start us off. You have 90 seconds.
For one thing, I can hit the ground running. I'm the only one of the candidates and a co-leadership team with Jonathan Pedno, where Jonathan, in terms of our work, sharing of that job sharing work, Jonathan will concentrate on working on the inside of the party to get our internal mechanisms working to make sure that together we get ourselves on a good solid financial footing. But look, I'm also in Parliament where I found that the media is much less interested in what a former leader has to say in Parliament than a current leader, and current leaders who are not in Parliament are also not able to gain media traction. My goal is that, as I've seen, we've had 3 leaders since I stepped down, and the longer we go on without a leader who's in Parliament, we do become less relevant, and we need to be relevant immediately. As I said, hitting the ground running, we have some real opportunities here. We have a new executive director starting November 15th. We have a new president recently elected. We'll have a new leadership team very soon. And we also have a by-election in Mississauga, Lakeview, and Mary Kidnew. I think Jonathan and my plan has been out for a while, but we're calling for an immediate retreat. We want to show our members and the Canadian public that we get together and we work well together. I think we should get together in Mississauga Lakeshore and canvass and put up signs for Mary and prove on the ground that we're back, we're effective, and we can get good voter turnout and solid support.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Jonathan?
Thank you for the question, and thank you, Elizabeth. You're hitting some of the points that I wanted to raise. Look, I think it's important that we also have and have an ability to showcase the crucial, how the climate emergency is already impacting Canadians throughout the country. That's something that Elizabeth does constantly in the House of Commons. I traveled to Magdalena Islands in Quebec after Fiona. I think it's crucial that we are able to be on the ground talking to Canadians. We don't have the luxury of waiting here to reestablish a new team to get people introduced to media and to Canadians. We need to hit the ground running as soon as possible so that we can effectively fundraise. We can get a good comms team that will support our action teams, and we need to get out there to attract good candidates who will be willing to run for us in the next election. That is crucial. Furthermore, I think we can and we have an opportunity to attract other members of parliament in Ottawa, people who are sitting day after day with Elizabeth, who see her in action, who trust her. We have chances of doing that if we select the right leadership, and that will be crucial for us to come in strongly and prepared for the next election.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Chad?
Thank you for the question, Chelsea. So we believe that the first step to rebuild the Green Party's relevance and the credibility of the Green Party is on November 19th to elect new leadership. We have to show that we're able to stand on our 2 feet and not move backwards, but instead move forwards with the Green Party of Canada. And part of rebuilding that credibility, in Anna and I's opinion, is to show that we can move the needle on issues that matter to Canadians and that other groups in civil society are working on already. The fact is, we don't need to reinvent the wheel on climate policy. We have many allies in the civil society and in nonprofit organizations that are working in the same direction that we are. We believe that if we put our efforts to raising their voices and raising their issues and help to move the needle forward with our partners in Parliament, working with Elizabeth and working with Mike Morris to push those things forward, we can show Canadians that we are a credible organization that can move important issues forward for Canadians. And to rebuild our coffers, we plan to reinvigorate our membership by getting our EDAs involved in that effort to push these campaigns forward and get our members to fundraise for those campaigns, to really raise awareness about the important climate policies that need to get moved forward and that need to be implemented. And I think that all parts of our team can be a part of that change. And that's how we begin the process of rebuilding credibility, through demonstrated action.
Okay, thank you. And Sarah, you're next.
My leadership represents a return to our roots. Ecological wisdom marries well with Indigenous teachings around 7 generations thinking, that we're not just focusing on the next election, we're focusing on 150 years in the future, 200 years in the future. What do those future generations need us to do now? They need us to create infrastructures around local food security. They need us to create infrastructures around small-scale energy resiliency. And I'm pleased to tell you that after speaking with thousands of members over the past 2 months, that Greens are leaders in our communities. We are creating the infrastructures that future generations need to survive and thrive. What we're missing is a leader's office that gives the collective the credit at every turn, that focuses on harvesting those leadership stories, that values our volunteer base. I'm representing a return to a rules-based order within the Green Party of Canada. First, our members create policy. It goes into a policy book that, yes, needs reordering so that it is readable and usable. Then your leader and their shadow cabinet curates that member policy book in a very transparent way that shows members what our election-ready platforms and planks are. And I have done that on my website, sarahgabriellebarron.ca. Then we get together.
Thank you, Sarah. Simon, you're up next. Simon, sorry, I think I keep anglicizing your name. I apologize for that. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, no problem for the name. So I spoke recently to an acquaintance in Ontario who was strongly in favor of strong climate change action. I asked him if he would consider joining the Green Party of Canada. He said no, because he did not believe in single issue parties and had, in any case, always been an NDP supporter. I understand his point of view. I too was for more than 10 years with the NDP because I felt that it was the best vehicle to bring social democracy in Canada. I joined the Green Party of Canada because I felt that the NPD was ignoring the urgency of climate change action and because it was diluting its effort to achieve social democracy for the sake of sharing power with the Liberals. I believe that the only path to making the Green Party of Canada relevant to Canadians is to offer them a full slate environmental and social democratic policies. The party failed in previous election largely because, apart from our focus on the environment, voters could not figure out where we were on other issues. And in this regard, the election slogan, not left, not right, but forward, confused them even more. Canadians, especially in my own province of Quebec, want a credible party of the left to offer them policies to combat dystopian capitalism while fighting climate change. To be relevant in the next federal election, we should run on a crystal clear platform of green social democracy.
Okay, thank you, Simon. And Jonathan, you raised your hand. Did you want to intervene?
Yeah, just as a rebuttal, quick rebuttal. Firstly to Simon, if I had met your friend, I would say, and I would have responded that the Greens actually have a lot of policies on a number of social issues, and in fact, we are the ones who keep saying and hammering that the environment touches on everything, the economy, our health, our education. So it's crucial that we have people who are able to defend our policies as much as possible. Now, just briefly to touch on what Chad was saying, renewal, electing new leaders. We need to show the Canadian public that we have the maturity, first and foremost, to understand that we need to get out of a crisis, that we need to have a leader who sits in Parliament. And as to renewal, I'm 32 years old. I'm the single one here who has never been involved in politics the way most of the other candidates have. So I think we need to clearly look at renewal where it is also to be found. Thank you.
Thank you. And last, we'll give some time to Anna to answer the question.
Great, thank you. The question was, how do we rebuild the party's credibility in the eyes of the Canadian public? And I think that we need a strong, and Chad and I believe we need a strong focus on cleaning up our internal governance. We've got to get our act together. We can't just jump straight to the external without demonstrating to the Canadian public, not just telling, but really doing the work, strengthening the governance systems and showing that we have changed. Once we have done that work, we can begin to succeed in the sorts of focused issue-based campaigns that I believe Mike Morris is doing an incredible job in Parliament of representing exactly what it means to be a very effective and focused MP, not commenting on every single issue and reacting as it comes up in the media, but he has really cut through on the Canada Disability Benefit campaign that he has focused on and run. And of course, Elizabeth has been a big supporter in that over the last 6 months. He's worked across the aisle. He's gathered a parliamentary petition. He's brought together people from all 4 parties, and it passed second reading unanimously. He's been lifting up the voices of civil society advocates. He's been educating all of us on what is the Canada Disability Benefit and how could it make a difference. And that work is an example of a short-term change that is going to make a difference for 40% of Canadians who live in poverty, but it's also driving towards that long-term or radical vision that Greens hold of a universal basic income.
Thank you, Anna. Elizabeth, you have some rebuttal time left, so please go ahead.
it's not so much a rebuttal. It's just to say, absolutely, Mike is doing a fantastic job and I love working with him, but he's doing it because he's a parliamentarian. He's in Parliament. We need to be able to build on that. And he hasn't just focused on the disability benefit. Mike's been doing great work as well on housing, as well as on climate, as well as on looking at the fraud that is carbon capture and storage. We both have to reflect our full suite of green policies and respond to them in real time effectively. My environmental racism bill will pass and get from Parliament into the Senate, and I certainly soon, and it brings forward a whole platform for environmental justice. We are effective, we focus, we do the work, and the work happens in Parliament, but not to the credit of one or two individuals. It's a whole team and its members across the country who encourage and who ask us to take up the challenge of issues they care about.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Simon, you have some time left to rebut as well.
Yes, Jonathan, I just wanted to add, like, we need to listen to people, what their worry, what they want, and where they are politically. And then after, like, I don't argue with them. You know, I share information, opinions, our policies, but I don't argue with people.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll move on to the next question.
I had my hand raised for using some of my rebuttal time here.
I'm sorry, I didn't see it there. Yeah, so apologize for that. Go ahead, Anna.
No problem. Thank you. This is to rebut some of the points that Elizabeth made in her very first intervention on this question. Elizabeth is going to be in Parliament anyway, regardless of who wins the leadership. And we are committed to work extremely well with her and with Mike, should we win the leadership. And it is part of creating that aligned strategy to work very closely with caucus. And I understand that that was not done under our previous permanent leader. And I think that that's a real shame. I do think it is a mistake to task a new co-leader in Jonathan, with respect to Jonathan, who has not run in an election before and who is new to the party, with the work of internal rebuilding, to say that you would focus on external and he would focus on internal. I think that electoral experience really matters, and I would love to see Jonathan run and learn what it takes to succeed in an election. I also think it's a little naive to run a retreat for council 2 weeks after being elected. That sounds like it wouldn't be a very well-prepared retreat. And so we've got a little bit more of a realistic approach in our own 6-month plan, which was the first 6-month plan published amongst all of the campaigns in this race.
Okay, I believe Sarah raised your hand. Go ahead, Sarah, and then we'll go to Jonathan again. Go ahead, Sarah.
I was just trying to unmute there. It's a little bit sticky. We would gain a lot of credibility if Mary Kidnew was elected our 3rd MP. And I've been out canvassing with her twice, and she has a real chance, because the messaging is that for once, citizens in Mississauga Lakeshore get to vote with their heart. They don't have to vote strategically. So Greens, if you're listening, please get out there. And I do believe that our credibility will increase if we have the leader's office that provides the electoral district associations with monthly media templates, so that they're constantly exercising that muscle on how to communicate with the media. And those media releases need to have cohesive political messaging. They need to be based on our policy one-pagers that we co-create with our shadow cabinet. And they need to, yes, definitely support the work that our caucus is doing, and also coordinate on campaigns with our provincial Greens and the global Greens.
And Jonathan, please go ahead.
Thank you. Well, as it happens, Anna, I am running a campaign at the moment, so I do have some campaign expertise and experience. But I'd like to hear from you guys at some point when you have a chance to respond. You know, how exactly would you manage leading the party from outside the parliament? You know, because leading the party does require having an ability to engage with the prime minister, with the other party leaders who all sit in parliament. So if we do want to have the credibility that this party deserves, I think we should have someone who is actually sitting with the MPs and has a chance to discuss with them constantly on a daily basis, and a basis of trust.
Okay, Chad, we'll go to you.
Yeah, thank you. We have that person. We have Mike Morris and we have Elizabeth May, who are inside Parliament and inside the House of Commons. So that is great, and we'll fully rely on them for our internal discussions in the House of Commons. But the fact is, Anna and I have 25 years of experience pushing policy successfully from outside the government. We know exactly where the pressure points are and how to push them to get results for the demographics that we work for, whether it's Anna working for 350.org or pushing for proportional representation, whether it was me fighting for rights of English-speaking workers in Quebec or fighting for the rights of students back in 2011, 2012. We know exactly how to put pressure on the government to get them to move in the direction that we need. And we believe in diversity of tactics. You need pressure inside and out. And we look very much forward to collaborating with Elizabeth and Mike Morris to make sure that they can put the pressure where it needs to be inside of Parliament by supporting them as leaders should. Thank you.
Okay, and Elizabeth, one more. You only have
Yeah, just quickly, I'll just say that the role of a former leader and MP, and I did try to talk Mike into running this, I think that the leader of the party needs to be in Parliament. Mike didn't want to do it. I felt I had to do it, not just because of the role that Jonathan and I can play in rebuilding, but because of the urgency of the climate crisis. And we are not, a leader who's outside Parliament is just not going to be as effective. And I know that we can actually go into the next election with more sitting MPs than we have now if members put their trust and their faith in our team.
Okay. And Anna, back to you.
Very briefly, Chad and I, if we are elected into the leadership of this party, we will very quickly be leaders in Parliament. Just watch us.
All right. Seeing no more interventions, I think we'll move on. We're safe to move on to the next question. So the fact of the matter is any organization's ability to fundraise is an existential matter. Fundraising is a major challenge for the Green Party right now and impacts its ability to run effective campaigns, whether that be advocacy related or political campaigns. What do you think the party needs to do to improve its fundraising operations, and how will you support this as leader? We'll begin with Jonathan this time around. Jonathan, you have 90 seconds.
Well, first and foremost, I'd say it's not by starting by taking a break, as Anna and Chad are suggesting they do right after this election. We have December, the month of December, which is traditionally our strongest month on fundraising. Elizabeth and I have already done pretty well on fundraising, raising up to 60, probably more than 60% of the total amount of money that's been raised by leadership contestants so far. And we've done that because we have contacts, because Elizabeth is a known figure, is a known quantity by so many Canadians. She inspires trust. She is known, and that does help us as a party. We do need to actively, urgently fundraise as much as we can so that we can actually pay for all of these beautiful ideas that we do have. Running, as we've done in the past, and in fact, as was, started off under the leadership of Elizabeth, having training sessions with EDAs, with candidates, which is not a new idea that's suddenly popped up during this race. That costs money. We need to be able to support our caucus. We need to be able to support our EDAs. We need to be able to support a good staff in Ottawa that is able to help this party attract good candidacies, attract good MPs in Parliament. And I think that together, Elizabeth and I will be the strongest team that can bring in money for this party. Thank you.
I think you're on mute, but I think it's my turn, so I'll just go ahead. So perfect. I just want to correct one thing that Jonathan said. We're not starting the leadership by taking a break. What we said in our 6-month plan, which I invite everyone to go check out at keenanwalcott.ca, is due to the stress and burnout that we're seeing in our fund and in our council, that we would like to give them some time to relax. But Anna and I are going to hit the ground running on, as I mentioned before, running 2 to 3 issue-based campaigns to help raise funds on specific issues, not just because we're the Green Party and we need your money, but because we're trying to move the needle on important issues that our allies in nonprofit organizations and civil society advocacy groups are pushing forward. We have extensive experience in fundraising, and though Elizabeth and Jonathan have wealthy donors, we've been able to attract a wide breadth of donors from coast to coast. We've actually collected the most amount of individual donors in the campaign. So if we're looking at revitalizing our finances, if we're looking at taking the party to the next level and moving forward with strength, then Anna and I are the best option for the Green Party of Canada. We have a demonstrated ability to take our ideas from an idea and implement them into action. And we plan to do this within the first 6 months of our leadership. If you do go look at our 6-month plan on our website, you'll see that we're the only campaign that put a measurable strategic fundraising plan together that has numbers and targets, and we plan to hit those targets in the first 6 months.
Okay, I'm unmuted, but moving right along to Sarah.
Greens need to focus on fundraising as well as fundraising. Our morale is really low, and it's hard to think that we're only going to succeed if we reach a certain dollar level. And so fundraising needs to occur mostly at the Electoral District Association level if we are truly going to turn this organization into a decentralized power structure. If we only focus on fundraising out of the leader's office or with the staff, then we do run the risk of returning to a hierarchical system, which has been our problem all along, because that goes against our key principle of a decentralized power structure. And so I'm proposing something called EDA Plus. And instead of like what's happening now, the EDAs being asked to loan money to the central structure, I will be providing like a all-you-can-eat buffet of services out of the leader's office. And when the electoral district associations have confidence through cooperative deals, the ones that have quite a bit of money will be supporting the leader's office, supporting the staff from the leader's office, supporting the staff at that central level, because they're receiving the services that they have already asked for, like policy one-pagers, like cohesive political messaging. I'd like to invite everyone to check out my 6-month plan that is just basically point form of my overall platform, because I include the idea of.
Thank you, Sarah. Simon, you're next.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I think that it's always difficult, like when a party is renewing itself and try to go and with a new leadership. It's like the Green Party like grow in the last like 20 years. Like Elizabeth built herself. I think the party built Elizabeth. The money was coming in and things were going well. And then 2020, 2021 happened. And then after, like, it was more difficult to get money, for sure. So we need to show that we're professional, that we're making things properly, that we're working hard, that EDA are stimulated. And in that present race, it was pretty hard to build the momentum because the route was very short and made a way that, you know, like nobody could really start in the race before the 31 of August. So it make a very short race with a very short windows also to go get new members. So there was choice to be made and it was hard. So I think that when people, the population will see, the citizen will see that, you know, the Green Party has new leaders, everything is in place, we're working hard together, policies are theirs, we're serious, we're professional. I think that money will come back and we will be able to build. And yes, we'll have to be organized and answer citizens like requests and ask, but I think professional.
Thank you, Simon. Anna, 90 seconds on fundraising.
Thank you. So let's be real. You know, if you speak to people who've been members of the party for a long time, many regular monthly donors have said, I've stopped donating in the last 2 years because of all of the internal toxic conflict. So job number one is to develop that culture of accountability that we talked about earlier, to clean up and prevent internal toxic conflict from occurring. I've said it multiple times, the best way not to air your dirty laundry in public is to do your laundry regularly, to keep the sheets clean. And that's what good governance is about. I also believe that on November 19, what the party needs is a new narrative, the story of new, dynamic, yes, unknown, young, dynamic, exciting leaders that will bring a lot of media curiosity. I think a story of, returning to previous leadership is a story of the party, going backwards or going sideways, and it's not something to invest in. People want to invest in a party that is on the way up. And we want to give that hope. How do we do that? The very first thing that we'll invite people to do is to donate, to become monthly donors, sustaining donors for the first year. And after that year, we'll ask people to reassess, did we get the results that we promised? And if we did, then please continue to invest, but at least take that chance on new leadership, a new leadership style, a new approach to reinvest in the party and to give us a fighting chance to rebuild our staff to support a broad volunteer network across the country.
Elizabeth, go ahead.
Well, first, I think it's important to remember who's in charge of fundraising in the Green Party, and it's not the leader. The leader is part of a team, and that team starts with the executive director and council who set the goals and set the targets, and then the team has to fall in and help. Now, I did that through this year when the party decided to reduce the staff. I joined the volunteer action team for fundraising. I did fundraising around World Environment Day and brought in $50,000 in several days. I know how to fundraise. I'm probably the party's best fundraiser, but I wouldn't take credit for doing something that's a team effort that requires the executive director and council. So I want to correct something I keep hearing, this idea of there's a leader's office. When I was leader, I didn't have a leader's office. I didn't have staff. I was there to be a worker. I work hard and I work with the team. And the team is the council and the fund. And the first thing, and you'll see it in Jonathan in my 6-month plan, let's get a drill down on the financial situation. I don't have those numbers yet. I look forward to getting elected as leader with Jonathan and being able to have access to see where we really are financially. We need to use the month of December. And yes, I'm sorry to say it, Jonathan's absolutely right. December is our biggest fundraising month for a reason. People see the tax deadline looming, December 31st, and they make their donations then. We can't afford to let December go by because it seems too soon to pull everybody together for a retreat. It's exactly the right time. And December 12th is voting day. And
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Did I see someone had raised their hand to make an intervention there?
Yeah, I thought about it, then I put it down. I'll put it back up. Jonathan mentioned that as of the last reporting that the team, Elizabeth May and Jonathan, had raised the most money, and that is true. The second team was the two of us, and we are competing and noting the very significant difference in national profile. I think that that's actually quite significant to notice. We've brought in more donors at a lower dollar value across the country, and they represent new donors, not people who've been long standing. So this is a chance for us to grow, and considering that Elizabeth has 1,000 times the number of Twitter followers than we do, I think we are proving our own, and that we're coming into our own as leaders already.
Okay, Jonathan, go ahead.
Very briefly, we also brought in new donors. Yes, you have more donors, but 50 perhaps. So let's just be clear on that. And then to finish, you talk about having costed ambitions on your plan for the first 6 months. You had costed ambitions for your campaign at the very beginning, which were of $200,000, and I don't think you raised that much. So I think we need to be realistic here. Elizabeth and I are that team. We have that experience, we have the contacts, and we can bring this party forward.
Thank you, Jonathan. We'll move on now to the one-on-one portion of the debate. So basically, we're going to be starting with climate policy as the topic to dive in here. During this part of the debate, two candidates will face off against one another. Each has 1 minute to respond to the question and then 30 seconds to rebut. Climate policy is obviously the bread and butter of the Green Party, but it's no longer the only political party concerned about climate. What do you see as the biggest difference between green climate policy and that of the other federal parties is the question. And we'll start with debate between Chad and Sarah, and we'll give Chad the first word. So Chad, you have 1 minute to respond. Sarah, you will have another minute to respond to the question, and then you will each be given 30 seconds after that. So Chad, go ahead.
Perfect. So the Green Party does lead on bold climate action and climate policy. Other parties love to cherry pick our ideas and wave them in front of the Canadian electorate every 4 years. But the fact of the matter is they take our policies and they throw them on the back burner, and they do not implement them. The Green Party of Canada still has a place in Canadian politics because we are the only party willing to actually push to implement our bold climate action policies. We're the only party that's willing to stand up to the fossil fuel industry and propose regulation and taxation so we can take those dollars and reinvest them in our communities to tackle the housing crisis, to tackle the health crisis. So Greens are absolutely still have their place in Canadian politics. And we still have a lot of potential to reach, whereas the other parties are stagnating and they're not doing the things that are necessary to address the crises that we face at this time.
We need to take two tracks. We need to support Elizabeth because she is a world leader in the House of Commons on the IPCC and the legalities around that. However, we need a grassroots leader who recognizes that Greens on the ground are already leaders in our communities around creating the infrastructures that future generations need. We need a small scale energy resiliency work group that gets together weekly. And it is shocking that the other parties have not yet created a national food security mandate. Greens are experts in this field. It is our superpower. And we will be getting together at least once a week to talk about creating a national food security mandate that is climate change ready. We can't hear you, Chelsea.
Sorry about that. Chad, you have 30 seconds to respond in kind.
Perfect. I don't often agree with my competitors over here, but I'll agree with Sarah that we do need to reimagine our energy policy. But the fact of the matter is simply getting together once a week to talk about these things is not going to move the needle on it. We need to be investing in our local associations to give them the capacity to be leaders in their communities and build other leaders within their community. It can't just be an internal Green Party process. We need to include the rest of society. We need to lead in our communities through action. So yes,
that's what I'm getting at, Chad.
Talking about policies is great, but we need to do the work of creating capacity and showing our members and our EDAs and our candidates.
Okay, and Sarah, you have 30 seconds to respond.
That's exactly what I'm getting at, Chad, is that we are already leaders in our communities, but we're not communicating with the leader's office so that on the national stage, I can champion that. And that's the missing link in our communication. The Green Party needs to become an organism that is always fed from the grassroots up and a leader's office that champions those stories.
Okay, all right. So next up for our one-on-one is.
Sorry, Chelsea, do you mind if I get a quick?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I can't. Yes.
Yeah,
go
the
ahead.
hand is white, so it's not very obvious. I just wanted to end my point by saying, yes, we are leaders in our community, but we need to mobilize and not just talk about it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So now we will turn to Simon, and Elizabeth for the next round. And Simon, you can go first with 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. So the Greens are relevant on that issue, on that topics for more than one reason. The Liberals are totally schizophrenic. The NDP is just talking about the dental plan. The Conservative, yes, they did something, and but like fossil fuel, like they really put something in their platform, but will they walk the talk? I don't think so. The Liberal are not walking the talk, so I don't think that the Conservative will walk the talk. So who's left? Like the Green, that's the party who will keep putting pressure on them. So we need more MPs to really put the pressure to make sure we'll get into a coalition government and be able to make things change with great policies and make sure that the policies will be put in force and that we will change the economy, change the way the country is going, and make the place better and reach the objective. The Liberals make.
Okay, Elizabeth, you have 1 minute.
Greens have by far the best policies and programs. Look at Mission Possible. It's costed, it's detailed. And I'm afraid that I disagree with Chad Nana. It's hard to say this out loud, but a lot of the environmental groups have fallen into the trap of thinking they have to cheerlead for the Liberals because they're so afraid of the Conservatives. They really have to focus on telling the truth. And the truth is that only the Greens have policies with any chance of holding on to 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius, and avoiding tipping points that will be disastrous and lead to self-accelerating, unstoppable climate crisis. We know how to do this, and I'm not just somebody who goes to Parliament. I go to the front lines. I got arrested fighting the Kinder Morgan pipeline. And if you look at the answer to our question for the week, talking about how we move out there and mobilize and organize at the grassroots level so Greens across the country are part of teaching resilience and adaptation locally while fighting climate change globally.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Simon, did you want to respond? You have 30 seconds.
Elizabeth, I agree with you on everything. So it's pretty hard to argue on that because I think that's what we need to do, and you're doing it great at the House, and you need to keep working hard. And now we need to bring more MPs to help you and to be there and make sure we will build a social democracy there, a social democrat government, and make things change. And I can't agree more with everything that Elizabeth said. So that's my position regarding all that. Yes, we need to work together and make sure that we keep growing. And
Elizabeth, did you want to rebut the enthusiastic agreement?
Well, we're in violent agreement, but there's no point in rebutting. I will add that we have a responsibility as Greens to tell the truth unvarnished. So this fairy tale of net zero by 2050 and how everybody's on board, Justin Trudeau is telling a fairy tale. Jagmeet Singh doesn't seem to understand the issue well enough to talk about it. We are needed more than ever. And even environmental groups like 350.org, last year, their campaign was to try to, and that was when Anna was working with them, trying to force the NDP and the Greens to merge right before an election. Not a good strategy. We have to talk about climate and be clear.
Okay. Anna and Jonathan, it's your turn to go up against one another. And Anna, you can begin with 1 minute.
All right, thank you very much. I believe that in order to influence action on climate change, we need to not only tell the truth and talk about how urgent it is, we need to make very clear strategic plans that lay out the priorities for solutions. And the priorities for solutions are very clear. If you look at Canada's national emissions profile, you can see that we've had a flat line in our emissions for the last 20 years, except for a little dip for the pandemic. And that wasn't anything due to government action. We've successfully reduced our emissions in the electricity sector, but those emission savings have been more than made up for by the expansion of the oil and gas sector, a total failure by the Liberal government to regulate oil and gas as they've needed to over the last 7 years, and also massive expansion in our transportation sector. The solutions are very clear. We need caps not only on emissions from oil and gas, but also on production, and we need a massive investment in our municipalities, which the Federation of Canadian Municipalities has been calling for. Chad and I are very clear about our policy priorities, and they're solutions oriented, not problem.
Okay, I'll just turn to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, you only have 38 seconds remaining for interventions, but go ahead.
Didn't ask for the floor again, Chelsea. Not sure.
Oh, sorry. I thought I saw your hand go up. Well,
no. Oh, I was indicating the line of which Canada's
okay.
emissions are going up. I don't know about a flat line, but I wasn't trying to rebut.
Disregard then. So we'll turn to Jonathan. You have your 1 minute for this topic.
Well, I'll start by saying that these policies that Anna and Chad have, they're green policies. They're not your policies. They're not my policies. They're not Elizabeth's policies. They're the members' policies. And our members have been building the most incredible set of policies, which other parties have been stealing for so many years, and they take credit for it. And the reality, and Canadians see it more and more, is that they don't walk the talk. We still don't have, after 8 years with the Liberals in power, we still don't have an adaptation strategy. And we just had Fiona recently. We just had Canadians from coast to coast faced by extreme weather events. And our government is telling us that we have to wait until November. Well, we are in November before we see an adaptation strategy that probably won't start that they say won't start being implemented before 2030. I don't see that as being them taking the climate seriously. We are the party that takes climate seriously, but we also need to implement a PR, proportional representation, as soon as possible so that we have an inclusive democracy that will be able to face these crises that are coming our way.
Anna, you have 30 seconds to respond.
Great. Of course, the policies that Chad and I are prioritizing our member-driven policies. But it's also the role of the leader to choose how to communicate those policies to the Canadian public. And Chad and I are proposing a focus on the biggest ticket items that are the items that will resonate with the Canadian population now. We know that for effective communication, we need to choose a priority focus, and we need to repeat that message over and over and over until it gets through the Canadian population and they join us in their advocacy and raise the pressure to actually get those changes implemented.
Jonathan, 30 seconds back to you.
And I want to talk to Canadians like the adults that they are. Canadians are able to understand the complexities of this situation. We have politicians in Ottawa who do keep repeating and repeating and repeating about climate, about this, about that. We are, and Elizabeth is a prime example of that. She gives complex, sometimes long-winded answers to very short questions, but that is exactly what makes the difference between us and the Liberals and the Conservatives. We are policy-minded, we are detailed-oriented, and we will continue to do that work in Ottawa as effectively as was done before.
Okay. Anna, you can go ahead and intervene. You have 37 seconds left total to do that, though.
Okay. We need to differentiate between when we give the full policy complex solutions, and I think the position for that is in committees and in negotiations, versus when we give the clear, focused, strategic answers, which is in our broad messaging to the Canadian public.
Okay. Thank you, Anna. We will move on to the next question. As leader of a party with only a few elected MPs, how would you influence the governing party of the day, the government of the day, to pursue more ambitious action on climate change? And we'll begin this round with Simon and Jonathan. And Simon, you can go ahead. You have 1 minute to start.
Okay, thank you. So it's pretty vague, you know, I don't know, like 10, 15 MPs, or I don't know, the Conservatives are there, it's a minority government, a majority government, there's all kind of scenarios that will allow us like to influence the government. If it's a monetary government, we could have the balance of power, like you're depending on who's in the house, and then we could do a lot of things. We could like use that balance of power to make sure our policy go forward and that we make real change. And we could also negotiate with the party who has the majority, or like to you know, if to be able to make our policy, like I said, go forward. So I think in those scenarios, the Green are very relevant, and will be able to make like I go back to the policy, like go forward. Yeah.
Okay. Jonathan, you have 1 minute.
No, I would like you to imagine being a backbencher MP for the Liberals or the NDP, being muzzled all the time, coming into politics with ideals, with an ideal to change Canada, to change the world, to have more influence on climate action, and seeing your government, in fact, seeing your Minister of the Environment, who's a former environmental activist, come into this government and you know, give new licenses to the oil industry. I think there is a lot of discontent on the benches of other parties, and we can provide a stable house for them if we select the right leadership, if we have a leader who is in the house, who's able to attract and also make assurances to these MPs, because no MP is going to join a boat that, you know, where they don't know who the captain is, or where the boat appears or appeared recently to be going down, but may not. So I think it's crucial that we have a strong team with someone in Ottawa right now to have these discussions, to increase the pressure on the government of the day.
Okay. Back to you, Simon, for 30 seconds.
Yes, I know it's a debate, but it's hard to be like in the disagreement with Jonathan, what he said there. It's like, it's by being there that we can influence the other MPs and bring them information that maybe they don't, you know, have access to, they don't see, or they're stuck in their bubble. And it's a way to communicate and make sure that we will be able to bring the knowledge, bring the policy, bring different way of seeing things and the topics. And that's very important.
Okay. And back to you, Jonathan, for 30 seconds.
Well, thanks. I mean, I'd just like to add that we can provide the stable House for other MPs, and that is an effective way for us to increase the pressure on the Liberals who are in power right now, who don't feel the heat because the NDP provided them with the confidence and supply agreement for peanuts. In exchange of peanuts, they're basically selling their soul, and that is a message that we need to also make sure Canadians understand and know about. We can be the alternative to these people who make promises and don't deliver.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Jonathan and Simon. Next up, Anna and Sarah. Anna, you have 1 minute to talk about how you would influence the government of the day on climate action.
Great. As Chad mentioned earlier, both Chad and I have a lot of experience running campaigns that influences the government of the day from the outside, and often that's been done in collaboration with people who are within the rail as well. You need to know who your allies are in Parliament, and in our case, our allies before we are elected as MPs would be very clear. I think there's 4 prongs of a strategy for influencing the government of the day. One is building citizen pressure by building movements outside of Parliament, making sure that as many people as possible know what the demands are and are voicing those demands loudly and in concert. Secondly, diplomatic influence across party lines, having those one-on-one discussions and to know what your numbers are for the votes that are going to be taking place in Parliament. Third is growing our electoral power by ensuring we have 60 to 100 high ambition campaigns in our district associations across the country. And fourth is framing the debate in public media in ways that lead the debate and force other parties to respond rather than the other way around.
Thank you. Sarah, you have your 1 minute.
Who is at the forefront of holding this government accountable? Indigenous nations are at the forefront of holding this government accountable. We don't need to pull policy out of our hats. Members told us what they think is most important. Protect old growth forests. Government, an independent oversight panel of the RCMP. Supporting the Wet'suwet'en. What is ecocide? We need to all understand it because our membership overwhelmingly voted that we need to stop ecocide. It's taking that 7 generations thinking of the future and embedding it into our legal systems. Young people are suing the Doug Ford government for ransoming their future for profit today. We need to be election ready. And that means providing policy one-pagers to our candidates that we co-create based on that process. We need a rules-based system that is embedded in our Constitution, and we haven't done it yet.
Thank you, Sarah. And Anna, did you want to respond?
Yeah, sure. One of the things that I most appreciate about Sarah's voice in this race is her very strong advocacy for the Indigenous communities across the country, and that's from a history of her work on Manitoulin Island, and I deeply appreciate that. I agree, and we need to support civil society voices and Indigenous voices in bringing forward the issues that they are so passionate about. I think the old growth protection, and especially what's happening now in Fairy Creek, is a beautiful example of where there's a local fight that's on the ground.
And back to you, Sarah, for 30 seconds.
And I'd just like to say that those policy one-pagers was a directive that came from the EDA Revitalization Project of 2021 that I was deeply involved in. I've been a grassroots Green for over a decade now, and I'm supporting what we are already doing.
Okay, great. So we'll move on finally to Elizabeth and Chad for this question, which is, again, just as a reminder, how would you influence the governing party of the day to pursue more ambitious action on climate change? Elizabeth, you can kick it off with 1 minute.
Well, the reason I'm running in this leadership race is exactly that. I realized I wasn't effective as a member of Parliament without having the additional clout and the traction one gets in the national media as leader of the Green Party. And I didn't want to repeat my experience in the structural weaknesses of the party, which is why I hope that our membership will also support the move that of the 6 candidates, 4 of us think we need, which is to move towards co-leadership. I'm absolutely certain that we can get more action out of the current Liberal government if they feel some pain. Right now, they're on cruise control thanks to the NDP and the confidence supply agreement with very little in return and nothing specific on climate. I've said to some of my NDP friends, you guys used to say you're going to hold the government's feet to the fire. Well, now you're threatening them with the comfy chair. We're coming at you with the comfy chair. I mean, we need as Greens to get those discontented other members across the aisle to join us and sit as Greens.
Chad, your 1 minute.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Anna and I, as we mentioned on multiple occasions, we know how to put pressure on governments. We've done it in the past. I did it to the Liberals in Quebec back in 2011, 2012, and I'm ready to do it to the Liberals now. But we do that by empowering our grassroots mobilizers in communities across the country to create movements for change in their communities and put pressure on individual MPs. And Jonathan mentioned before the relationships that Elizabeth has with members in the House of Commons. We also have those relationships with members in the House of Commons, and we can also attract them to cross the aisle or work in collaboration with them to put pressure within their own party. In our roles in our nonprofit in the past, we've had to deal directly with MPs and push and convince them to take our policies and put them into action. And it's something that we will absolutely continue to do, especially with strong MPs like Mike Morris in Parliament, as well as Elizabeth May. So it's a team effort.
Elizabeth, 30 seconds to respond.
Just to remind people, before I ever joined the Green Party of Canada, I had 2 decades of experience in grassroots organizing and working within the Sierra Club of Canada. I'd already received the Officer of the Order of Canada Award for my work as an environmental grassroots activist. That's what brought me to the Green Party of Canada. And we do need to make that difference that gets the Liberals to look at the IPCC advice and realize that their policies are off track. They are on track, as Antonio Guterres said, to the highway to climate hell.
Oh, Chelsea, we can't hear you.
Back to you, Chad. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and with all due respect, Elizabeth, we know that you had your roots in grassroots organizing, but over time it seems you may have forgotten those roots, because we have not seen the grassroots organizing within the Green Party of Canada. Jonathan mentioned EDA empowerment. We have not seen EDA empowerment under your leadership, which is why our EDAs are kind of lost and spinning their wheels. We need to do the work of reinvesting and renewing the strength of our party in Parliament and inside of our party at the grassroots level.
Okay, Elizabeth, you have 38 seconds remaining on your intervention time, so please go ahead.
To just be clear, as leader of the Green Party and being of service to the Green Party over 13 years, I was not allowed to do the things I wanted to do in grassroots organizing. Staff did not report to me. They chose their own way forward. Please look at my answer to the question of the week and my proposal for how we can, with a team on council and a new ED, put forward grassroots organizing across the country to build this party.
Okay, thank you. And Chad, back to you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I have read your entry, and I think it's very interesting. But the fact is, I forgot my point. The fact is, we need to move forward in a strong way. I'm sorry, I did forget my point, so I'll have to just cede my time.
Okay, Jonathan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, sorry, just briefly. I mean, you say that there was a lack of empowerment of the EDAs. We did, I mean, under Elizabeth May, we elected 3 MPs in a system of first past the post. That's not nothing. That tells you we have 6 good candidates now in this race. 5 of them are not Elizabeth. 5 of them are new people. That's also a sign that there is new energy in this party, and we need to preserve that. But also we need to stabilize the party at this moment, get ourselves elected, and then move on. While acting on climate forcefully.
Okay, and Simon, go ahead.
Yes, Elizabeth is a very strong MP. She's doing a great job at the House of Commons. She had 13 years to like she said, to be the leader and to put things together and make the party grow. And we saw what happened. So she was there, she did it, she got it to a point. Now it's time to renew and to go into a new direction. And I think that I will be able to work with her, work with Mike Morris and make the party go in the right direction and grow again, get more MPs and go forward. And even Jonathan, if you want to run, you will have a place in the next green MPs or green party that's coming.
Okay. And yeah, go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot. I remembered my point now. Simone mentioned the 13 years of leadership, and I did read your entry, but the fact of the matter is, we can't hide behind the fact that the leader doesn't have a direct ability and a top-down power to impose their will, but there's a persuasive power that the leader can use. You know, I was part of an executive of 8 for a year when I was part of the Concordia Student Union, and we had 0 votes on council, yet we never lost a motion because we were able to persuade our colleagues to go in the direction that we thought was best for our association. As leaders, Anna and I have those same skills, and we have 1 vote. That's 100% more votes than I had back in the day, and we fully expect that we'll be able to persuade our colleagues to go in the direction that we think is best for the party in order to get the highest amount of results. And Elizabeth, we absolutely look forward to working with you in the House of Commons to empower you to push forward our bold member-led policies.
Okay, thank you. Jonathan, unfortunately, you are out of time for interventions, so that'll be the last. We'll move on to the next topic, which is the economy. We'll turn now to discussing. Okay, I'm repeating my lines. We'll turn now to discussing the current economic situation. Many Canadians are struggling amidst a cost of living crisis. How do you think the federal government should be responding to this crisis? And if elected leader, how would you advocate for those struggling? And we'll start with, again, a one-on-one debate between this time Sarah and Elizabeth. Sarah, we'll start with you. You have 1 minute.
We do have an affordability crisis, but at its root, it is a crisis of greed. Over the last 7 years, Justin Trudeau and his liberal gang of turkeys has not receded from neoliberal policies that do create inflation, but has spiraled ever more deeper into neoliberal policies. And why? We are struggling with kitchen table issues, but he does it to line the pockets of his gang of corporate turkeys. Only the Green Party holds these people accountable. We do it as a team, we do it together, we do it forcefully, and we do it confidently.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Elizabeth, go ahead.
As an animal rights activist, I just have to take offense on the behalf of turkeys. I don't think that we really want to be comparing turkeys to liberals. In all seriousness, the inflation crisis and the cost of living crisis we're now experiencing has its roots in the climate crisis, has its roots in the war of aggression from Putin against Ukraine. Global green values call for peace and nonviolence and for a culture that is based in ecological wisdom, as Sarah has said. I don't think we disagree with each other, Sarah, but we need to explain and we need to fight for Canadians to recognize that trickle down doesn't work. The rising tide only lifts all yachts, not all boats. We have to actually tax wealth, as the Green Party has called for. We have to have the resources to assist those. And as a single mom myself for much of my life, and not being able to necessarily have enough grocery money for the month, I know what it's like. We have to make sure we take care of the most vulnerable as we also continue to fight the climate crisis.
I think that if we're going to hold the Liberals accountable, we need to hold the Liberals accountable and not say that it's going to continue on and on just because we are in a climate crisis. For sure, we are in a scarcity situation and Greens are living up to that challenge. However, we need strong voices to hold those Liberals accountable, to hold those Conservatives accountable, and to say that it is this economic system that fundamentally is hurting us.
Back to you, Elizabeth.
I'd like to ask Greens watching this to try to find online the speech I gave in response to Chrystia Freeland and the Fall Economic Statement. I pulled apart the questions of war, the need to seek peace, the need to actually face the fact that our extractive economy is driving the climate crisis and not meeting the needs of the most vulnerable. We do have a voice that needs to be raised on this point, and we do need to be the ones who point out that the inflation crisis of the moment is not normal inflation. We are dealing with something that I'm afraid is going to be much more persistent because of the climate crisis.
Yeah, it's neoliberal policies, and we need a left-leaning economy that brings back heart, that brings back socialism. And we need to stop thinking that gross domestic product is a measure of national health and bring in a national well-being index. Greens have been talking about it for decades. We've been waiting for a leader who champions this concept, and I have in the center of my platform.
Okay. We'll leave it there and we'll move on. Thank you to Jonathan and Chad up next. Jonathan, you have 1 minute on the clock.
Thank you. I very much agree with what Sarah said. We are in a crisis of greed. We are in a crisis of accumulation. And accumulation is at the very heart of capitalism, the system that we evolve in. When people hear capitalism, they often jump to defenses and say, oh, well, we need that. It comes along with democracy and all of that. The reality is that what we need is a marketplace, but capitalism is based on extractivism, is based on adding value to and creating scarcity with our time, scarcity with our natural resources. And we know that these resources, as Greens, we very much know that these resources are finite. So it's important that we create a well-being economy, an economy where all Canadians feel that they have the time, that they have the ability to participate in their society, to take time with their kids, with their parents, and that we can make possible through the guaranteed livable income, which is the one thing Greens have been fighting for so long. And with us, with Elizabeth and I, that will be one of our top priorities.
All right. And Anna?
I think
Oh.
it's Chad. Yeah.
Chad, sorry, I'm all over the place. Chad, go ahead.
No problem. So I'm really happy to hear that Jonathan and Elizabeth have decided to take our talking points with the well-being economy. It's really flattering to see, that our ideas are spreading throughout the campaign. The fact is, to create that well-being economy and to make those investments in the areas that we need, such as the guaranteed livable income, such as housing, such as better funding for our healthcare system, is we need to be bold enough to regulate and tax the fossil fuel industry. Because the fact is, part of the thing driving inflation is the fossil fuel industry. Elizabeth was apt to say that the climate crisis is driving inflation. And the fact of the matter is the fossil fuel industry is making profits hand over fist. We need to rein them in. We need to tax and regulate that industry, use the funds to invest in renewable energies, use the funds to invest in housing, health, education, and build the exact well-being economy that Jonathan so astutely mentioned. Thank you.
Okay. Back to you, Jonathan.
Well, that's a great thing. I mean, we're all Greens in here. We have very similar ideas when it comes to policies, and now is a question of how are we going to implement them? How do we build the momentum needed at the national level to elect as many MPs as possible? And how do we communicate with Canadians about their economy, about our solutions as Greens to the problems that they face in their daily lives? I think all of us here, all candidates here, will be part of a strong team. We need to take these messages forward for the good of Canadians and for the good of the future of a future Canada that's both green and.
All right, and back to you, Chad.
So to answer the question of how, Anna and I have a bold policy to invest in our EDAs, to invest in the capacity building of our membership, to ensure that they can lead by action in their communities, to give Canadians a hunger for engagement in the political process, to ensure that we can push as a collective from the grassroots, and not just within our party, but within our society, to tell our government, this is the direction we need to go in. And so we're very much looking forward to, as leaders, investing in our membership and creating better mobilizing capacity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan and Chad. So what happened was I skipped ahead to you. Elizabeth, you have just, I think, a few seconds left for an intervention. So 12 seconds, go ahead.
Amazingly enough, I apparently put Chad and Anna's platform in my 2014 book, Losing Confidence. I've had these ideas a long time.
Okay, thank you. So Anna and Simon, Sarah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that a missing link is worker control of the workplace. It's a longtime socialist idea, and it was in 2 of our policies that came through, that workers can control the purpose and conditions of their work, the distribution, reinvestment of wealth, and decisions around sharing, tying highest income to lowest income. But more than just words on the page, more than just words on the stage, Greens can get together and start working on ways to implement these ideas with partnerships in our workplaces.
Okay, Thank you, Sarah. So now we'll move on to Anna and Simon. Anna, go ahead. You have 60 seconds.
Great. The cost of living crisis is hitting Canadians, in their pocketbooks. People are worrying, more people than ever are wondering, how am I going to make ends meet at the end of the month? And one of the reasons that we've arrived at this point is because we failed to follow green policies for the last 20 or 30 years, and it's led to ever more centralization of the economy in the hands of a very few monopolistic companies who then act as price setters while all of us are price takers. To solve our reliance on gas and how much money comes out of our pockets for transport, we need to be shifting towards public transport and active transport and electric vehicles instead of private gas vehicles. To solve the housing crisis, we need to decommodify housing. We need to get real estate investment trusts under control. We need to regulate Airbnb. To cut the cost of groceries that are so impacted by global supply chains and the global commodity market, we need to support local value-added processing that also supports rural communities. And then we need to address the basic income across society with livable minimum wages and guaranteed livable income. So Greens have a complete policy.
Okay, thank you. Simon?
Yes, so I think only green social democracy will make the long-term change that the economic condition of Canadian needs to improve. I've been talking about the dystopian capitalism, but so let me explain it. It is a type of society which includes and relies upon profit-seeking firms, global finance, state and international organizations, wage worker and unpaid caregivers, the extraction of environmental resources, and the exclusion of those who stand in its way. It shields itself from popular discontent through the manipulation of traditional parties such as the Liberal and the Conservative Party of Canada. And as an individual, we cannot prevent dystopian capitalism. We cannot simply wish it a quick and natural death. What we can do is rally voters to elect enough Greens MP to form a green social democratic coalition government that will return the government critical to the lever of economy like transportation, energy, and housing.
Okay. Back to you, Anna, 30 seconds.
Well, rather than rebut, I'll just expand on my previous answer. Both Naomi Klein, I've got one of her books here, and Najib Jutt, who was considering entering this race, have said, if we want people to care about the end of the world, then we need to show them that we care about the end of the month. Greens need to connect the climate crisis to the economic inequality that we're facing. And I agree, Elizabeth's speech in response to Chrystia Freeland was excellent on this front. One of the very interesting policies Chad and I are foregrounding is how to make the financial savings of energy efficiency also accessible to renters, not only homeowners. So I encourage people to check that one out.
All right, and back to you, Simon.
So I'll repeat it, social democracy government, that's what we need. That's how we will make change. And that's the Green Party is the only party that bring that forward. We need a government which will help rebuild our public health sector and transition Canada to a carbon neutral economy based on advanced state-owned green technology. And the other party are talking, but they're not doing anything. In fact, we're just growing, the economy is growing, capitalism taking more place, and that's where we're living right now.
All right, that concludes that topic. I don't see any hands up, so we'll move on. Our last topic of debate is foreign policy. The Green Party has faced internal struggle and when it comes to certain questions of foreign policy. One of the more sensitive issues in the party's recent history has been its approach to the Israel-Palestine conflict. What is your position on this conflict, and how will you manage the conflicting views of Green Party members when it comes to this and other sensitive matters of foreign policy? So we'll do Simon and Chad, Simon and Chad up first for a one-on-one. Simon, you have the floor for 1 minute.
So my position is the two-state solution. That's my position regarding the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, and that resolution needs to come from the inside. It needs to come from communication between the two states, and everybody needs to be able to sit at the table and communicate and work together. We have like two group of humans who are living side by side and needs to find the common things that link them together so they can go forward and find a solution. And so that's my position regarding that foreign affair like position. Yeah.
Okay. And Chad, what's your
So the Green-
position and how will you manage the conflicting views of Green Party members on this and other sensitive matters of foreign policy?
Sure, I don't know that we have conflicting views on this issue necessarily. I think there was the only conflict that existed when this came up last year was a conflict of how to address it, right? There was a refusal to acknowledge what were effectively inappropriate comments from Annamie Paul's top advisor. And I think that's what led to the downfall. But the Green policy on this issue is quite clear. We're against acts of aggression of all kind, and we propose nonviolent solutions to resolve conflict. Right now, what we're seeing in the Israeli-Palestine conflict is, it is apartheid on the behalf of the Israeli government, right? And we have to differentiate criticisms from the government from blanket criticisms of the Israeli people. And it's important to not use discrimination to describe these things. But unfortunately, what happened in the last leadership was a refusal to acknowledge what were ultimately inappropriate comments from Annamie Paul's top advisor towards our elected officials.
Okay, and back to you, Simon, 30 seconds.
I would have that we need to make sure that there's no attack from both sides, but especially Israel, that's with his military, that needs to be respect. Palestinians need to be respect. They have rights. All those things needs to be discussed. And I think Canada has a role to play in all that. We need to communicate. We need to play a role that will allow them to sit at the table and communicate. And that's where Canada can get there and be able to facilitate the discussion.
Okay. Back to you, Chad.
Absolutely. So I think a huge point of contention around these issues is how we communicate with one another about these issues. And I think it's important that we focus our communications and our disagreements by leading with respect. We have to respect one another on either side of a debate, because on these issues that are so contentious, on a conflict that's been going on for decades and decades, there's going to be emotions attached to it on one side or the other, but we have to detach from those emotions and attempt as much as possible to engage with the people that we're debating with based on respect, first and foremost, and no discrimination.
Great. Sarah and Jonathan, you're up next. Sarah, you have 1 minute.
I wrote our party's first policy on Palestine in 2008, that we would recognize Palestinian right to nation state status at the United Nations. And in 2016, we brought in boycott, divestiture, and sanctions. It was very detailed. Elizabeth May did not want us to use that title, forced us into a special general meeting in 2016 under weird rules that were questionable. And we did end up making a very detailed, and we did have a good policy in the end. That we've had a hard time because it draws our candidates into the weeds. And so I'm bringing us back to that original policy that I made. And in terms of foreign policy, I've been the only leader in this race to consistently bring us right back to, since 1988, we have said that we would get out of NATO. We would focus our peacekeeping efforts at the United Nations General Assembly. And I have yet to hear that from any of the other candidates.
Jonathan, 1 minute.
Well, I've worked in several of these places, and I've worked in Israel. I've worked on Israel. I've documented abuses by the Israeli police within Israel against Israeli Palestinians. My former organization, both of them, in fact, and both Amnesty and Human Rights Watch, called the situation in the occupied territories as apartheid, and I stand by that conclusion. Now, I want to be very clear here. The entire Eastern Mediterranean basin is faced with a critical climate crisis. So we can keep talking about two-state solution, one-state solution, but the real emergency here, the real threat to the livelihood of these people is our emissions here at home. So let's focus on that, because we are a party that is federal. We're a small party. We need to grow. We need to be able to voice our opinions and our views on foreign affairs, but we do need more MPs if we are to make a difference in the Israelo-Palestinian conflict, because right now we only have 2 MPs, and that's simply not enough to bring the Canadian government in one direction or another on these critical issues.
Sarah, 30 seconds.
I'm sorry, Jonathan, but we do need to focus on international issues. That's our job. We're running for federal office. And the only way that Canadians and Canada as a middle power is going to sign the treaty on the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons is to get out of NATO. This whole planet is facing the potential of nuclear annihilation. And the only way to make this planet a nuclear weapons-free zone is for middle powers like Canada. And I challenge the other leaders, please let our members know, let our future candidates know, what is your position on this?
Okay, and back to you, Jonathan, for 30
I'm
seconds.
coming into federal politics to talk about global issues. That's what I've been doing for 15 years. So if you think that I don't want us to have positions, you're mistaken. Now, that being said, the Green Party takes the positions. We did take the position to get out of NATO, and I fully agree with that. I do have personal experience with peacekeeping operations in a number of places, including South Sudan, Central African Republic. I've seen peacekeepers rape, I've seen peacekeepers abuse, because we have an international structure right now that is not perfect. We do need to focus on that and not simply, dream, have a blue pie in the sky type of discourse. These issues are
Simon, you have 1 minute, 18 seconds left in your intervention time. Please go ahead.
Yes, I won't take that much. So I agree that this is apartheid and that needs to be stopped. And regarding NATO, we need a reform of NATO, and I agree with that. Something new needs to come out and put Canada in a different position. We can't just be like, we can't just follow the United States all the time. That's not the foreign policy that Canada needs. Canada needs its own voice on the international scene and stage, and I think that's very important.
Thank you, Simon. Okay, last we'll go to Anna and Elizabeth. You'll wrap up this round. Anna, you have 1 minute.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Sarah, for laying down the challenge to all the other candidates. I do agree that we need to review our membership in NATO, and that's consistent with what I've said. People have been mischaracterizing my personal stances on NATO all over the internet recently. It's quite interesting. But talking to European Greens who are around in the 80s and 90s, it's been very clear. Greens across the world have said that NATO needs to disband in the same way that the Warsaw Pact disbanded, and that it would be much more appropriate to have a European security cooperation that's independent of the really hegemonic power of the US. And we can look at what would security for Canada look like. And I think that Greens can bring that very unique voice into the international security discussion. On Israel and Palestine, I do believe that the party is united through very hard-won policy. We've got it written right here, and I actually have to give credit to Elizabeth May for her leadership during that time at the end of 2016, when there were very strongly divergent factions within the party, and there was a previous policy passed. May I just continue using my time there to finish my point?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so she expanded the scope of that work to use consensus to arrive at a very nuanced policy position. I think that apartheid is the right word to use to describe what's happening in the state of Israel. And if we are a friend of Israel as Canada, then we need to call our friend in. If we see a friend in our community that is abusing their wife or their partner, we need to call them in, and we need to do the same in our international relations. That's what a feminist foreign policy would really look like.
Okay, thank you, Anna. And I believe your time is up now for interventions. Elizabeth, go ahead, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. And I am very proud of the policy that the Green Party of Canada developed. And thanks for that, Anna. That was gracious of you. The policy was developed through, as I mentioned earlier in this discussion, consensus decision-making, building until we get divergent views on the same page. And the reason we had a special meeting was that accidentally, and I don't know how it happened, the Ottawa meeting ran under Robert's Rules of Order against our Constitution. When we were able to bring everyone together for consensus, we achieved it. And as a co-chair of the Global Greens Parliamentarians Association, I've been working with my friend Stav Shafir, who's leader of the Green Party of Israel, and Dr. Tamimi, who's leader of the Green Party of Palestine, working out of Ramallah, trying to get, and we've had Zoom meetings. It's the first time anyone's brought the two together as Greens to say, what do we do because of the shared threat that they're experiencing, as Jonathan just said, of the climate crisis as it affects the region. We can work together as Greens Greens and my recent speeches all over the place raise the issues that were mentioned earlier.
Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. And we'll go back to Anna quickly.
Yeah. One of the things that often comes up when Israel and Palestine is discussed, especially when the word apartheid is used, is whether it is anti-Semitic to use that term. I don't believe it is. And I believe that we as the Green Party need to demonstrate our commitment to protecting the Jewish community in Canada from anti-Semitism, which is a very real experience. You see very many Jewish people being labeled as personally violent just because of their religion when they have nothing personally to do with what is going on the ground in Israel, Palestine. So we need to foreground.
Okay, and Elizabeth?
Just as my work within the party has come to consensus around what we must do to achieve justice for Palestinians, I also am a leader within Parliament in the Canada-Palestinian Parliamentary Friendship Group. I consistently speak out for Palestinian human rights against the violence that the Israeli government and military are using against Palestinian children. It's deeply distressing and immoral what's happening to the innocent Palestinians of the West Bank, and what's happening in Gaza is a crime. We have to speak out.
All right, that concludes that topic. Thank you. We're at the end of our time. Sorry, Sarah, go ahead. You have a bit of intervention time left. You're muted though.
Unmute. I just want to say that when Sweden and Finland tried to join NATO, that I do believe that Elizabeth May spoke in favor. And that was a real lost opportunity because our policy is that Canada would get out of NATO. And there aren't a lot of voices, those dove voices in Parliament. There's more than enough hawks. And I'm just wondering if Elizabeth has enough time to let us know why she did that.
She's got a couple seconds. Go ahead.
I've spoken out against NATO in Parliament several times recently. I guess you missed it.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll move to closing statements. We're going to do 1 minute closing statements because we are over time. So we'll go in reverse alphabetical order. That means Chad, you're up. You have 1 minute and you have the floor.
Perfect. I think throughout this debate, Anna and I have demonstrated that we have the skills and experience to take the party to the next chapter of our existence, and help lead the party through this difficult era that we're experiencing as Canadians. We want to invest in deepening our democracy throughout our wonderful nation, and we want to do that. We want to invest in our EDAs. We want to invest in our membership we want to get our house in order in order to get back talking about bold climate action, building a well-being economy, and as I said, deepening our democracy. And on November 19th, we hope that you are willing to support us and go on that journey with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chad. Jonathan, you're up 1 minute.
Thank you. Well, we have five at least strong candidates here, and it's going to be a tough decision. 5 because I exclude myself. I want to share a few things that I learned from fellow candidates and for which I am grateful. From Elizabeth, I've learned the deeply personal sacrifices that come with public life and the stamina, the abnegation, the steadfastness that's required for such a role. From Chad and Anna, I've learned the usefulness of organizing early and the camaraderie that can blossom even between competitors. From Simon, I learned that there remains space in politics to engage in substantial arguments and discussions. And from Sarah, that even in disagreements, sometimes about tactics and perception, there is no space to doubt about someone's selfless intent when you embark in the busy, unforgiving, ungrateful political life. So I want to thank everyone here. We're standing up for you, for the members. I hope you give us your trust in this upcoming election. Thank you.
Elizabeth, you're next.
Well, I want to say I think we've built a very strong team through this leadership race, and this should be acknowledged. I want to be the next leader of the Green Party, working in a partnership with the youngest of the candidates, Jonathan Pedneau, whose experience is extraordinary and who amazes me every single day. But I want to also make sure that we keep this team, that those of us who put ourselves forward for leadership, and I do believe in the model of servant leadership, leader's not the boss, the leader doesn't get their own way, You work as a team and you hope you succeed to get the same vision and move forward together. That is always the goal. But the reality of this is that we have to elect more Greens. We have to attract other MPs in order to make a difference before the next election, because that's the timeline we've been given by the world's scientists. The hope for the world is Greens. The future is green. We can make it so. We keep working together, and I ask members, please give me your trust and give us your vote.
Okay, and Anna, 1 minute.
I've really enjoyed the debate tonight, so thank you very much to Chelsea for your moderation and the Hill Times for hosting us. I loved the format and the interactivity. I loved the questions, and I have also really enjoyed interacting with this group of 6 candidates. I can hardly believe that we've only got 10 days left of doing this together, and our lives will all change dramatically after this race one way or another. Chad and I have immensely enjoyed working together since February is when our collaboration started, and I'm really hoping that members are seeing what we're offering, seeing that it's new, dynamic, creative, a fresh face for the party, a new chapter in the history of the party, that we're credible, we're competent, we're well organized, professional, all the things that we want in new and renewed leadership. And we're encouraging voters to mark us as number 1 or 1 and 2 on your ballots in either order, whichever you prefer. Thank you. Thank you to everybody.
Simon, last words, 1 minute.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you for organizing that debates and make it possible. Let's. I built my campaign on ideas. Like if you go on my website, simonjmacy.ca, you'll find all my ideas. Those are my position at this moment. They can evolve, change with time, but that's how I think things. They could be influenced. And I put forward social democracy, and I think that's where we need to go as a party, social democracy, and make sure that we that the government eventually take more state into the development of the country, like we see in Quebec with the hydroelectricity, or even in different in the insurance or other environments. So there's pharmacare, there's all kind of stuff that should be done, and that we should go forward and make sure that it's the citizen that benefits from all that. So thank you for having us, and go see my website.
Thank you. And the final answer goes to Sarah for a closing statement.
Thank you so much, Chelsea and the Hill Times, and thank you for everyone for watching. I've spent my entire life believing that the Green political movement is humanity's hope for salvation, not because of spirituality or emotions, but because it is logical. Greens stand for the health of our water, the health of our soil, the health of our air, the health of future generations, their ability to not just survive, but thrive. We must see everything going forwards, every issue, through the lens of the climate crisis. I'd like to thank Dr. Amita Kuttner for their leadership, and especially their policies that both of which are at the center of my platform. I propose something radical, that we follow our own constitution. Part of the reason we've been in disarray is because we're not following a rules-based order. It's grassroots, it's a great constitution, let's be true to it.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much to all of the candidates for their answers. And thank you to those in the audience for tuning in tonight and spending your Wednesday evening with us. Once again, my name is Chelsea Nash. I'm with the Hill Times newspaper in Ottawa. It's been a pleasure to moderate this debate. Thank you and good evening. We will have a brief period for media who's in the room to ask the candidates some questions. I think, though, Elizabeth has got to take off, so we'll bid her adieu. And with that, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think I'm going to take some questions from journalists, and I'm just hoping that those who are running the technical side of the debate can perhaps ask the journalists to either speak or get them to type in the chat. So I'm seeing Stuart Benson is online and Reza Patel. Stuart, do you want to start? Do you have a question? Maybe we'll go, Reza, are you able to speak? Do you have the? Are we connected?
Oh, can you hear me?
Okay, there you are.
Oh, okay, there we go. Okay, I just sort of I wanted to make sure that I got this. I think I heard it from most of you, but Jonathan Pinot, I didn't know if I heard a specific answer from you. Are you in agreement with the other candidates? And I guess I couldn't ask Elizabeth May, but are you in agreement with the other candidates that the Israeli government is guilty of apartheid in their treatment towards the Palestinians?
Yes, I said that very clearly.
Yes,
Yeah.
sorry, I just wanted to make sure because I didn't get it down, and I just wanted to make sure I didn't get or guessing on that. So thank you.
Is that all your questions, Stuart?
Yes, those are my questions for now. I'll follow up, but I just wanted to get that right down in case anyone has more.
Reza, did you have questions? Okay, I think Reza, I'll just ask one more time if you can hear me. Potentially, I don't know if you're having connectivity issues or what's happening, but if not, then we will, oh, she might be muted. Okay, all right, we'll leave it there. So if there's no other questions from media, hearing none, I think we can adjourn for the night. It's quite late here in Ontario, so we will, let you go and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Chelsea.
you.
Thank you to the Hill Times and for everybody for participating.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.